Okay, guys, so we have this problem where we are placing the brothers' fence. Okay, they live on the same plot of land, which is obviously this green area. We have a straight path connecting their homes. They want to add a fence to split their property using this rule. If a point on the property is closer to me, then it belongs to me. If it's closer to you, then it belongs to you. So the brothers want the fence to include a gate that is on the path between their houses. Where should they put their fence? So question 1, first thing that we're going to do is figure out where does their fence go?
In the middle.
Like middle how?
Like in the middle of the lawn.
Like, what do you mean?
What do you mean, what do I mean?
I'm asking you to be specific.
The middle of the lawn. Vertical.
Diagonally?
Okay, like, are we saying like this?
Yeah.
Not even.
Okay. So does it say that the areas have to be the same?
No.
What does it say exactly?
Straight path connects their houses.
After that.
Split the property. You this rule.
If it's closer to, here, we can label this like, can we call one of them Andy and one of them Bart? Okay, if it's closer to Andy, it's Andy's.
Yeah.
If it's closer to Bart, it's Bart's. So how do we figure where that line is?
The angle.
Okay, so maybe we start with a couple of points that look like maybe they're in the middle. Who does that belong to?
Andy.
Okay. What about this one?
Bart.
Okay. Are you guys writing this down?
What did I write down?
I don't know. We're putting dots. I gave you tools. No one suggested how to use any of the tools yet. So right now we're just
I already used them.
putting. What did you do?
I measured the path.
Okay. How long was the path?
I don't know. Let me remeasure. 2 1/4.
2 1/4. So what's half of that? Maybe measure it in centimeters. 5.8 centimeters. What's half of that? 5.8. So 2.9 for Andy and 2.9 for Bart. So where is that exactly? Like here? Okay. So does the line like separating their properties go through like this?
No.
But it's hitting that point. Okay, well, obviously I know that. Okay. I'm trying to help you guys like think about this and like articulate how we're going to find some more points in this line. Okay, so we have a point that is like equal distant from Andy and equal distant from Bart. How do we find some more points that are the same distance from both brothers?
The side of the box.
Okay, think about the tools that I gave you. Okay, so remember that we introduced the compass as a distance copier. So could you find some more points that are equal distance from both brothers? Go. Okay, so what happens is we would like to find all of the points that are the same distance from each of the brothers so that we can put the fence there. So let's experiment by doing some arcs with the compass. So I've got my compass set. It's a little bit more than halfway. And I'm just going to start. Ooh, that was huge. I don't want it that big. I just want it to stop. Okay, I don't know what was happening. All right, so I'm going to start by making some arcs, and I'm not going to change the distance on my compass. I'm just going to leave it. And I'm going to make that circle. So these arcs are intersecting here and here. Okay, let me change the setting on my compass a little bit. Pull it in a little. Okay, now I'm going to do some blue circles. It's pretty fun, actually. Okay, and those arcs are intersecting here and here. Now what you'll find is if you keep doing this, you can have infinitely many settings for your compass. You will eventually get all of the points that are, equidistant from both of the brothers. And if you connect them, they make a very special figure called a perpendicular bisector. Okay, perpendicular has this symbol. It means that it makes a 90-degree angle with that segment between their houses. That's the path. Okay, and bisector means it chops it in half. Bi means two, and sect is like chop. So it's chopping it into two congruent pieces. Chops, segment into two congruent chunks. Okay, so it makes a right angle, and this length is equal to that length. Now, if you're thinking about where to put the gate, it makes sense to have the gate on the path, halfway between the brothers' houses. So the red here is going to be the gate. Okay, we're going to put the red point right there. Okay, that point also has a special name. It is called the midpoint. Okay, it is halfway between the endpoints of the segment. It also is a bisector of the segment, chopping the segment into two congruent chunks that have equal measures. Okay, we're going to jump around a little bit. We're going to go skip part 2 for a second. We'll come back to part 2. We are going to construct perpendicular bisectors for each of these segments. I'm really only going to do one more with you because after that they're all the same, right? So, really quick, I'm going to put my compass on one end of my segment. I'm going to set my length for a little bit over halfway-ish. Got a little bit of wiggle room on that. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm going to make an arc. Why isn't that working? Okay, and then I'm going to move it over here without changing the setting on my compass. And I'm going to make another arc. I don't really need the entire circles, guys, because if you think about it, the points that I'm interested in are just this point and this point. You can do it more times if you want, but you really only need to do it once because every other set of intersecting arcs you make will be on the same perpendicular bisector. So this is the segment that we want. Okay, notice that it is perpendicular to my original segment and it chops it in half into two congruent segments. Okay. So this little box is the symbol for 90 degrees. That's a right angle. And that's how you make a perpendicular bisector. All right, let's go back to part 2. The rest of the segments are just for you to practice your constructions on. They're not for a grade or anything. They're just so that you know how to do it for when it is for a grade. All right, placing the brothers' fence, part 2. Okay, first of all, I am a nincompoop. And because I did this right after I did the distance formula, guys, I messed up this midpoint formula. Will you change these little baby X's, little baby minus signs to pluses? They should be pluses. I went through this with my class earlier today, and I thought I was going crazy. I was like, why isn't the midpoint formula working? And it's because I put the wrong symbols in there. Oh my gosh. Midpoint. Okay. So when we're doing, we have here the same situation. Okay, we've got the brothers. Okay, they've got a straight path connecting their houses. They want to have a fence that splits their property using this rule. If the point on the property is closer to me, it belongs to me. If it's closer to you, it belongs to you. They want a gate. Okay, so without using our straight edge and compass, how are we going to figure out where to put the fence and the gate? So we can use some coordinate geometry tools. One of our first tools that we have is slope. Okay, the slope of the segment connecting our brothers' houses is up 4, right 6. So that means that the M for my segment is 4/6, which reduces to 2/3. That means that if I want to make a fence, it's got to be on my perpendicular bisector. So it's got to be perpendicular to that segment. So I know that my M perpendicular has to be an opposite reciprocal. Opposite reciprocal. Okay, so opposite means it has to be negative instead of positive, and reciprocal means the 3 goes on top instead of the 2. Okay, so it kind of stands to reason that if we know that the total change going from, let's say, Andy's house to Bart's house is up 4, right 6. If I only went halfway, I'd be going up 2, right 3. Okay, so if I could find that point, then I could find my midpoint. So what I'm going to do is average my coordinates together. Let's look at this really carefully. So we can kind of tell that the midpoint should be here at 2, 4. I hope you can see that, right? So if I look at let's look at the x's first. Okay, my first x coordinate is -1. My second x coordinate is 5. Okay, so our first x coordinate is -1. Our second x coordinate is 5. If you see halfway between -1 and 5 is 2, okay, which is my x coordinate for my midpoint. It is the average of my -1 and my +5. So if I do -1 plus 5 and divide it by 2, averaging them together, I will get 4/2, which is 2. Okay, that's basically what my midpoint formula does. It averages the x's and it averages the y's. So if I use my little midpoint formula, which I put on your sheet, I'll write it again up here. My midpoint formula is m equals x sub 2 plus x sub 1 over 2, comma, x, just kidding, y sub 2 plus y sub 1 over 2. So add the x's together, chop it in half, add the y's together, chop it in half. Let's plug in our points. Point A down here is, what is that? Negative 1, 2. And point B is 5, 6. Okay, I need to get rid of some of this extra stuff because it's kind of cluttering up my board. Okay, that's starting to feel a little bit better. Cool. All right, my m equals x sub 2, okay, this is x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. X sub 2 is 5, and then I have adding a negative 1, divide by 2. Y sub 2 is 6 plus 2, divide by 2, and now we just simplify. So my m equals, what is that? 4 over 2, comma, 8 over 2. Now I just divide. M equals 2, comma, 4, which is what we predicted. Da, 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 right there. We were correct. All right, now it gets really exciting. I need an equation. So you may or may not remember from Algebra 1, but there was an equation that we used when we had a point and a slope, which we now have. I know what I'm doing wrong. This m is supposed to be a capital M because it's midpoint. Sorry, guys. The little m is for slope. Man, I have myself all twisted around today. Okay, so it's called point slope form. It was on our last review. And it goes y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. So I plug in all my stuff. Here's my x sub 1, here's my y sub 1. Y minus 4 is my y sub 1. My m is negative 3 over 2. And then I have my x sub 1, which is 2, so x minus 2. Okay, this is point slope form of the equation for my fence. If we want slope intercept form, we have to do a little bit more work. Slope intercept form is y equals mx plus b. All right, to get that, we have to get rid of these parentheses. So we're going to distribute our negative 3 halves. We get y minus 4 equals negative 3 halves times x. Negative 3 divided by 2 times negative 2 is positive 3. Ask your calculator if you don't believe me. Add 4 to both sides. And I get y equals negative 3 halves x plus 7. Okay, this is the equation for my fence. Okay, the coordinates for the gate that's my midpoint at 2, 4. So, I mean, obviously we just eyeballed it, right? But we could, if it wasn't a nice, pretty point that we could just see, we could plug it into the midpoint formula and get it. Okay, that was a lot, but we are done. That was it.